So I think the roller coaster is a bit of a genius one. It was actually Laura that thought of putting the roller coaster on some of the advertising stuff for this session, because you know what, challenge is a bit like that. You've got your ups, you've got your downs, and sometimes you've got a bit of flat in between. But most of the time, it's a bit of a rocky process. So developing the mindset to embrace the challenges ahead. What I'd like you to do is to start to use your imagination a little bit, and I do this quite a lot, and some of you are going to be able to switch onto this really, really easily, and some of you are just going to sit there and think, well, you know, what on earth is she going on about? But I want you to think about your mind, but I want you to think about your mind as a car. Okay, so that might be a bit challenging, first of all. So the easiest way to do this is just pick a car that you'd like your mind to represent. Okay, so it could be any car. It can be a flash sports car. It could be, I don't know, there's some people in the room I know that will probably choose something like a really nice camper van, something like that. Alternatively, I don't know, it could be a convertible. It could be something like that. Or it just could be this dinky little thing, which I think is really cute. So I'm going to use this one, okay? And I'm going to work on the basis that your mind is actually not that dissimilar to a little car. And little cars, whether they're big cars, little cars, whatever, they go on journeys, okay? And sometimes the journeys are, you know, pretty easy. And I really like this picture. It's a beautiful kind of moorland landscape. And you can see the road ahead, and it's not too steep. And you can see that, you know, yeah, there's a few sort of dips and a few gentle curves, but there's nothing too major there. And you know what? Sometimes life's a bit like that. It's like you can see what's going on. You know, you're fairly safe and secure, that you know what to do, etc. And you know, with your car, you know, if it's not primed to perfect condition, it doesn't make much of a difference, does it? I mean, at the end of the day, if you didn't have that much fuel in it, for example, then you could probably coast down some of those hills, knock it out of gear, that kind of thing. So you can get by, is what I'm saying, when life's like this. But if you're going to actually sort of achieve things in life, you actually have to embrace challenges. And when it comes to a journey like that one, your car needs to be in good condition to be able to embrace that challenge. You need to be able to, most importantly, select the right gear for that challenge so you can start, and then you can actually forge on so that you can keep on going. And it's part of this that it kind of stems from my background, I guess, on absolute fascination with how some people can embrace challenges. So obviously this is like hypothetical, but can embrace challenges and do really, really well. So they can actually switch into the right gear and do all sorts of incredible different feats. And this fascination started literally from when I was a child. And it developed from there, and it led to all sorts of research and working with lots of different people in different ways. And I'm going to share some of that with you as we go through. One of the key things found was people needed to be able to actively control their mindset. So they needed to select gear, if you like. So if they're in a mindset, let's say that they're about to embrace a challenge of some kind, in a business context, that could be that they're having to deliver a presentation. It could be that they've got a meeting with some potential investors, that kind of thing. So before that meeting, if they're feeling in a mindset where actually they're anxious, they're lacking confidence, they're struggling to find the right words, all the rest of it, actually that's not the best mindset for them to walk through the door into that meeting. So they actually need to be able to very quickly switch into the right gear that gives them the confidence, the energy, and the right attitude to be able to face that situation. So a lot of, particularly my early career, was very much around this mindset control. And we found that, you know, there are a few things that are really, really effective at very quickly changing mind state. So one from anxiety or fear through to one of confidence, like real confidence to be able to embrace situations. And in particular, this is the triad, and this is one part of the presentation that I'm not going to take credit for, because this actually stems from Tony Robbins. I'm a strategic intervention coach trained by under the Tony Robbins and Madani's collaboration. So this comes from his work, and I've tried this and I've tried various other different things with people, and I found that this is the most effective by far. So this approach requires three different things to happen, okay? So immediately change your physiology. And I'm going to go into more detail about this in a moment, but physiology is one thing. Another thing is you need to think about your words, so the words that you're using. And that's not just out loud to other people, it's also the words that you're using up here. And then the third thing, you need to be able to change focus and change focus quickly. So these three things prove to be very, very effective, and you can train people to actually do this really well, which is what I did. So I worked on it with myself, and it meant that I could embrace all sorts of different challenges. So for me, climbing was one of the things that I did to quite a high level, if you like. And certainly in certain contexts, if I couldn't manage my mind state both before and during the experience, then the decisions that I made could potentially be the difference between life and death. So mind state was incredibly important. Similarly, there were situations where things might be going wrong and I might have to actually regain composure partway through things as well. So that's a slightly different version of it, if you like. So I applied it to myself, both in terms of sporting context, but also professionally as well. And that involved me working with all sorts of different people, so coaching people so that they could really develop the confidence and really push beyond their fears. Now, that happened in an adventure sports context at quite high level coaching, but also led to training rescue teams as well. So training people how to rescue other people. And that's not just about ropes and things like that. It's actually very much about how do you make the right decisions in the right context. And working with various different rescue teams, mountain rescue, search and rescue. This was a lifeboat crew that I've worked with, and it's very much about how do they keep their composure as they're going into a setting, because yes, they might have all the medical skills, or they might be able to, for example, drive a boat, but if they're facing a situation where potentially somebody has got severe injuries, there may be deaths involved and everything, they need to be able to manage their mindset like that. They don't have time to wait and hope that they feel a bit more confident a bit later on. So working with these guys. Also led to working with other sort of different people. So teachers, did a lot of teacher training and instructor training as well, but helping teachers again to be able to switch their mindset so that they could cope with the different demands of different groups. So sometimes there's complex behaviours involved, as I'm sure you can appreciate. Certainly anybody that's got kids probably has a little bit of admiration right now for teachers, because kids are at home, and you suddenly realise just what teachers have to deal with on an ongoing basis. So working with teachers, and again, it was very much focused on mindset, through to business leaders. So business leaders being able to motivate, to give courage and confidence to the teams they're leading. And certainly that's something that I'm still very heavily involved in at the moment. I'm working quite a lot with the NHS in particular, doing leadership training with them. And this is very much about the leaders within the NHS trusts actually having that confidence themselves. But for them to actually feel that, they need to be able to control how their mindset's doing. So this kind of stuff worked, okay, and it was great. It was really good. It meant that I could push myself, and it meant that I could help other people to do stuff. It meant that I could step in. There've been a number of situations where I had to step in when people have either been injured or needed rescuing in some way. Ranging from finding people who unfortunately have just had a cardiac arrest through to doing a single-handed rescue of somebody who fell down a cliff. And you can do it. This stuff works, is what I'm saying. The only problem is, what I was very aware of is it works, but it's not sustainable necessarily if the challenge starts to change. In other words, if people are having to experience quite high levels of stress, and the challenge is varied on an ongoing basis, then what happens is they're continually having to change their mindset all the time. In other words, it's not actually that sustainable. And we find that even the high performers, actually, unless you take into consideration other things, they start to crash. So their performance drops. This was something I was really aware of, but I didn't necessarily pay that much attention to it because I was focusing on doing other stuff. So in terms of the mindset and what's actually involved, I'm going to go into that, and then I'm going to come back to that point in a moment. So to actually put this into action, I'm going to give you some examples. So with your physiology, it's the very first thing that you need to do. Okay, this would be my recommendation. So I guarantee that some people, I can see some people on the camera, and I'm loving your postures because I've got some great postures that I can see at the moment. But anybody else watching, I'm pretty confident that by the end of the day, a lot of people are kind of in this slump position over their laptop. And it's interesting because your body position sends signals and messages to your brain, and your brain actually interprets that information in certain ways. So let's take this position, this slump position. That's actually sending messages to your brain that you're in relax position and you're in protect position. Okay, now we've got a little figure there, and it's got a cape on his back, and it's the proper power pose. And you kind of like might look at this and say, yeah, right. But actually, it's been found repeatedly with studies that if you actually change your body position so that you bring your spine upright, so you sit up if you are sat in a chair, and you bring your shoulders back, what you actually do then is your chest comes out slightly, you lift your head, you enable your body to breathe more effectively. And what that does is send a message to your brain that you're in a position of power, you're in a position of confidence, you're ready to embrace the challenge ahead. And it's incredible how quickly just that can work. The other thing with your physiology is coming back to that whole breathing business. So I mentioned how shoulders back, chest out enables you to breathe. Actually, that's so important. Because what you can find is when people are feeling fearful or anxious, they're experiencing high levels of stress, their breathing changes and it gets faster and faster and faster. They might not even be aware of it. It's not just faster, it's also more shallow. Now, let's just think about when your brain knows you are most relaxed. It's actually when you're asleep. And think about how you breathe when you're asleep. It's not fast and shallow typically, unless you're having some kind of nightmare. Typically, you breathe in very deep and it's slow. That's when your brain knows you're relaxed. So if you're feeling anxious and you know that your breathing is actually shallow and fast, one of the first things you can do is sort out that posture, open up your chest and do some deep breathing. Now, it only takes a couple of deep breaths when you get used to doing this to actually stabilize some of what's going on in the brain in terms of your stress response. Now, the studies say 10 breaths. Some people say, oh, you know, I haven't always got time to do 10 deep breaths. And it's like, well, you know what? The average breathing rate is 12 to 18 breaths a minute. You've got 1 minute, I'm sure. So, you know, when you get used to doing this, like I say, it only takes 2 breaths, 1 at most. So that's one thing that you can do really, really quickly. The second thing is thinking about the words that are going through your mind. Because what you find is when people are having self-doubt and they're feeling fearful or highly stressed, in other words, they've got a negative mind state going on. What also happens is they have certain words and phrases that roll through their minds. And again, this is something that you may or may not be aware of, but it's something that I recommend you listen out for. Like I say, it's the stuff that you verbalise to other people, but it is also the things that you say to yourself. So, for example, I can't cope. I can't do this. I can't do this. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes wrong? These little things are not helpful. It's these little things that make a huge difference. The words that you use, honestly, the words that you use and the emotion that you attach to those words, it is literally you creating either your heaven or your hell. It's that powerful. Now, if you can catch your words and listen to them and say, okay, how is this helping me right now? And if it's not helping you, you flip them. So for me, I have certain words. So my certain words would be overwhelm. If I hear the word overwhelm, I know I need to change it. So I need to flick it. And for me, I need to say, no, this is a challenge. Bring it on. That for me, those words, challenge, bring it on, stand up, make a difference, step up. These are power words for me. And certain words will work for you. And it's worth finding what those words are. The other way of doing it is if you're feeling very, very psyched and you're very all over the place, finding words that just calm you down. So for me, just saying the word calm, because I've got used to doing it, even when I say it now, calm, just the process of saying it makes a difference to how I feel. So you've got the physiology, breathing with that. You've also got analysing those thoughts and what's actually happening, what words are you using and changing them so they're more empowering or more calming, whatever's most appropriate. And then the third thing is changing your focus. And what people tend to do when they're feeling fearful of something, when they're facing a challenge and they're feeling fear associated, what they tend to do is get very focused on exactly what they're wanting to avoid. So they become focused on what the danger is, in effect. So in business, they become focused on, what if I fail? What if I lose everything? That becomes the focus. What if I go into this meeting and I go all flustered and I can't speak? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I get my numbers wrong? They become focused on this so heavily that actually, inadvertently, they bring it on almost. It's a bit like riding a bike. For those of you that cycle, and it's similar to running, I guess, you might have something in your path ahead of you. And if you're aware of this, I don't know, it could be a tree root or an obstacle of some way. If you just focus on that obstacle or tree root, thinking, oh no, there's an obstacle, you can actually end up by steering into that very thing you want to avoid. So with this, you need to catch yourself, say, okay, what am I thinking about right now? What am I focusing on? I need to change that focus. So you focus on what it is that you're wanting to achieve, what the outcome is that you're wanting. And straight away, it starts to make a difference. So these three things are very, very powerful for that quick mind state change. But as I said before, what tends to happen with people when they've got loads of challenges in lots of different ways, it doesn't work as effectively. And what we need to also recognise is when there's lots of change, you don't necessarily know which direction to go in and everything else. So the whole situation changes and it amplifies the stress levels associated with it. So as I say, I didn't necessarily think too much about the fact that it wasn't sustainable in a long period of time. But I guess what I didn't appreciate was my journey, if you like, was about to change. And my journey was going to go from journeys where I voluntarily put myself on a steep hill in my car to actually a journey where there were going to be lots of changes and it was going to be uphill. And it was also going to be an unending road. In other words, I didn't know when the challenges were going to end. In other words, I didn't actually know what was on the horizon for me. So what I found was gear state change. Yes, I could do that very well. But by 2010, there was something brewing on the horizon for me. And it was going to come and it was going to change my life altogether and put me into a position where, everything changed. Everything went upside down. And I distinctly remember the day that everything started, if you like. And you've got to bear in mind at this point, I was very, I was active. I was doing really well in terms of my career and the people that I was working with. And then I had to go into hospital and have really, really routine surgery. It was so routine that I spoke to them beforehand and said, look, I've got a big event 2 days after the surgery. Am I going to be all right for it? And they were like, yeah, no problem. No problem at all. So I had absolutely no concerns whatsoever that afternoon when I went in October. And so I went in and I remember sitting with a consultant before the surgery and he was going through the consent form and everything. And it might sound strange, but I didn't take what he was saying at all seriously, as though it had any relevance to me. He talked about the risks associated with surgery, and I thought, well, this is so simple. This surgery is so minor, and we laughed and joked throughout that process. So I think you can kind of see where this is going a little bit here. I went into the surgery, and I was actually in the surgery for about four times the amount of time I should have been in there for. And when I came out of that surgery, everything had changed. And what actually happened at that point was I went from being that active person that was doing well in terms of their career, and I became somebody who actually couldn't walk properly. And I was on high levels of medication. I couldn't think properly. And that didn't last for a few days. That event never happened, by the way, the 2 days after. That didn't just go on for weeks. It didn't just go on for months. It was actually the best part of 2 years, and nobody actually knew whether or not I would return to any sense, resemblance of normality again. Now, during that time period, I think you can probably appreciate that it was a little bit challenging in different ways. Business just deteriorated. The money started to run out. My partner at the time walked out, and I ended up in a position where I was facing bankruptcy. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any money, and there's a difference between not having any money and having zero money minus a load. I ended up in that position where you don't have money, but then you've got a huge amount of debt, and I lost 2.5 stone during that time period, and that was because I couldn't eat. and it was because I couldn't afford to eat properly. It's actually when I met Laura during this time period. And I remember one day when I went and did some work, and I drove there, and I was driving a van at the time, and I drove there, and I realised that day that I did the work and then realised that I didn't have enough fuel to get home. And I thought about this, and it wasn't just the fact I didn't have enough fuel to get home. I didn't have any way of getting any fuel. I'd maxed out on everything, and I'd got loans from everybody. And I ended up by thinking to myself, well, there's an invoice that's I'm hoping it's going to be paid tomorrow. So I slept in my van because I couldn't get home. I was only 40 minutes away from where I lived. I didn't need a lot of fuel. So there were a number of times like that. And I hit rock bottom during that time period. And I did hit that point where I needed to make a decision. And I was using all my mindset stuff to my heart's content, and it was kind of working, but there was some deeper stuff going on, and it wasn't enough at that point to deal with the challenges ahead. And I knew that if I was going to keep going, and if I was going to develop my business, whatever that might look like in the future, and to forge forward and to achieve things in the future, then I really had to learn how I could most effectively help my mind to stabilise and to do that for me. And that was the start of my real journey of exploring everything I possibly could about not just mindset change, but about how you can actually fuel your mind. So what happened then was I recognised, coming back to this car analogy, yes, you need to be able to put yourself into gear and change gear. So you need to be able to change mindset. But you also need different types of fuel, I guess. And certain fuel for your mind is really, really good. And certain fuel's just not. And when you're facing really full-on challenges, and at the end of the day, starting a business can be full-on challenges, you need to be selective over what fuel you actually put in. So part of this process, I ended up by studying loads of different approaches to psychological performance, to well-being, happiness. It led me from exploring sort of Eastern philosophies through to Western science, looking at what research has sort of shown over the years, what current thinking is, all the rest of it. And what I found was that there are absolutely hundreds of different techniques that people use for enhancing performance in different ways. And those same things can be used for enhancing well-being, if you like, so happiness levels. And those same things can actually be used for developing confidence and combating fear. But actually, when you look at them, it's worth just identifying certain ones that are really relevant, I guess, to this particular context. So I want you to recognise that you've got to choose the right fuel, and it's the right quantity, if you like, at the right time, because it does make a difference. I'm going to start off with physical fuel. And physical fuel, so you've got a kind of physical fuel and you've got psychological fuel. And an example of physical fuel is actually alcohol and drugs. They fuel your mind in certain ways. They affect your mind state because they affect the way your brain functions. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't enjoy a glass of red. I know there's certainly one person on the call at the moment that would call me out if I did say that I didn't drink. But what I do know from my own experience, but also from extensive research on the subject, is alcohol has a very clear effect on your mood state and the way that you feel in relation to tackling challenges. So it's actually a bit of a misconception that alcohol gives you Dutch courage. It kind of does, but there's a very delicate balance. So it can make you feel more spontaneous and more likely to get up and dance on the dance floor, for example. But actually, what alcohol and other drugs can do, is quite interesting because their effects can be felt the following days. So it's after you've actually consumed it. And alcohol has a clear effect in terms of anxiety levels. So if you're in a position where you're feeling concerned about something, there is this temptation to have a drink to settle your nerves, and then try and go into the event perhaps the next day or whatever else. It's absolutely the wrong timing because the alcohol, the way that it affects your brain functioning, can actually intensify those feelings of fear. So this is one fuel that I became aware of. And it's one example, if you like. And these are just a few examples. There's loads when you look into it. Caffeine's another one that's a physical fuel. So a lot of us and a lot of people in business drink a lot of caffeine and use stimulants in some way. So I'm going to broaden this out and say, actually, there's a lot of drugs that are also heavily used in the business world that serve to stimulate. Again, I do drink coffee, but I'm also aware that there's a delicate balance and there's an optimum level for it. And that's the same for everybody. You've got an optimum level. Now, what can happen with anything that creates a stimulant, what it can do is actually intensify the physiological responses that your brain associates with anxiety. So if you think about it, if you drink a lot of coffee, it can actually lead to increased heart rate, shallow breathing, and increased breathing rate. Straight away, those things are sending messages to your brain that you are in a state of alert and that there may be a problem. So actually, we need to think through, okay, well, coffee's fine, but think through, okay, how much and at what time of day and when do I have it in relation to other things? Having a couple of strong coffees before you're about to go into an event that you're potentially a little bit nervous about, or a business meeting that you're nervous about, may not be the best thing. The other thing just to recognise is caffeine also has an impact on your ability to concentrate as well. So it can help initially. And then when you go over that point, it can actually hamper your ability to find the right words. So another example of physical fuel. Then we've got sleep, and I quite like this cute little fella. Sleep at the moment is one of those hot topics, and the business world is very much cottoned on to the fact that actually sleep hampers performance, no doubt about it. That's why many organisations are starting to consider sleep pods and rooms where employees can go and take a nap. It doesn't take very much in terms of reduced sleep for your cognitive function to start to deteriorate. One study that I did with the RAF actually found that a reduction of sleep by literally down to 5 hours, which there are people here that have had less than 5 hours, I pretty much guarantee it, we found that their cognitive function and decision making drastically deteriorated. We were not expecting that. We thought sleep deprivation would have an impact maybe 2-3 days in, but no, it only took one night for it to affect things. So actually, you know what, in terms of physical fuel, sleep's really important, as are many other things. Another example here is the nutrition that you take on board. I've used Marmite. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's actually quite a nice example of one form of nutrition that does have a big impact in terms of anxiety levels, and that's B12 and B vitamins overall. Many people actually fluctuate in terms of B12 levels throughout the month. Some people actually have a depletion of B12 anyway and actually benefit from having injections of B12. Regardless, most people do have some kind of fluctuations. So it's worth us thinking through, okay, well, what kind of fuel is good for my body that helps my brain? Because actually, something like B12 can intensify the feelings of self-doubt and can actually intensify the feelings of, lack of confidence. If you've got a reduction in it in your system. Marmite's one place that you can get B12. It tends to be in the kind of food types that are typically the ones that either people love or hate. So other examples are octopus, squid and everything else. There are a few other places that you can get it, but you can also get it in supplement form if you are interested in that. So again, it's just an example. Physical fuel is just one side of it though. You've also got psychological fuel. And this needs even more thought giving to it, because psychological fuel is everything that influences your thought processes that's from outside, if you like. So, for example, other people very definitely affect your thought processes in lots of different ways. So there will be people that you engage with, that you chat with. For example, at the start of this session, I was listening to the way you guys were all talking, and that's really positive. There's a positive vibe, positive energy. People are supportive, want to help. Situations like that are really, really powerful for developing that confidence, that inner confidence that you can actually embrace challenges. It's vastly different when you speak to people that say, like, what do you know about that? Oh no, I wouldn't set up business at the moment, not with a pandemic going on, what's going on with the economy? It's completely different. Have you thought about the fact that XXX, like, hugely powerful, and certain people in your life, depending on their relationship to you, can have even more influence. I think it's quite fascinating that Einstein's father, till the day he died, believed his son was a failure. And you sort of think, wow, I wonder what those conversations were like and what impact they had at the time. So people are part of your psychological fuel in that sense. The other thing is how you choose to control your thought processes. So meditation and visualization exercise has been found to be hugely beneficial. A lot of people know it as mindfulness. Mindfulness is an overarching approach, if you like. And yes, does it work? Yes, it does. Sometimes it's worth taking the pressure off yourself with it. You'll read something saying you should meditate for an hour a day. Complete load of rubbish. You don't need to meditate for an hour a day for it to make a difference. Literally just a few minutes makes a difference. It really does. You can use apps to help you out as well, and I strongly recommend that. The Calm app's great, so is the Headspace app, and those amongst others have also got free subscriptions at the moment, so it's worth exploring. The other thing I mentioned was visualization. There's very good reasons why high performers in the sporting context and in the business world use visualization practices. The reason they use it is because it works. There isn't a shadow of doubt regarding it. If you can actually spend some time visualizing the outcome that you desire for yourself, for other people, for your business, whatever else, you are much more likely to actually achieve it and to make it happen. And we're going to come back to that in a short while. Other things in terms of mind fuel, it's the things that you listen to and digest. So audiobooks, there's really inspirational ones out there, can really fuel your mind in very positive ways. Completely different to if you spend your time listening to Sky News. It has a different impact in terms of mind fuel. You know, listen to somebody like, I don't know, it could be Tony Robbins, Les Mills, you know, there's a whole range of different people, Brené Brown, Tim Ferriss, there's loads of different people out there that are doing some really inspirational things, that are educational as well. Similarly, reading books, I don't think there's a single sort of high performer out there that I'm aware of that doesn't seek to learn on a very, very regular basis. And again, it's very powerful what it's saying to your mind, that you're developing, you're growing, that you can take on board new information. You've also got things like spending time in nature, exercising. Both of these very definitely have clear effects on your thought processes and how you're feeling. And the other thing connected with that, I quite like this picture because it always makes me smile, and that's why it's up there, is finding the joy in the little things in life. And I think that's sometimes we can lose track of that, particularly if we put ourselves into a project such as starting a business. It can become all consuming, and it becomes very serious sometimes. And being able to find the joy in the little things is incredibly important. Similarly, actually having future focus and making plans for the future, and making those positive plans that you're really engaged with. Spending time with people and having connections with loved ones and making space for that to happen, despite the fact that you might be in the middle of a load of things in terms of your business. And then you've got time for yourself in terms of, I sometimes know it's joy breaks, but it's just space. It's space for you, space for your own thoughts. It's space for you to perhaps just take some time out to do something that you really, really enjoy. And when I work with people, particularly business leaders that are very busy, and I know that they're very busy, and they say, I don't have time for that. It's like, oh, no, you do have time. You make time for things that are important. Even if you have to get up 20 minutes earlier, there you go, 20 minutes. It's given to you. It's 20 minutes of your life every day. Imagine the culmination of that you could spend on doing something just for you that really helps to get you into a really good mind frame. Then you've got other things that can really help with calming. So a lot of people actually doing chores, cleaning, that kind of stuff, find that it's really, really effective for helping to calm themselves. So, you know, calming the environment, so clearing things away, again, has been found to be really useful. Gratitude is something that has been talked about a lot, so you'll probably have seen people referring to that. So whether that's doing a gratitude journal on a daily basis, or whether it's literally just listing things off that you're grateful for, either in the evening or in the morning, both of which have a really, really positive impact. The other thing that you can do is, if you find yourself going into that negative place in terms of your mind, it's actually saying, no, I'm going to stop and I'm going to now focus on what I'm truly grateful for right now. And it's really interesting because if you're really experiencing gratitude, then it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to experience negative emotions such as anger, frustration, or fear in the same way. So it's very powerful at switching those thought processes. And then just here, I've got contributions. So this is somebody, for example, a COVID volunteer that's delivering some food for somebody who's in vulnerable capacity. I've ended on these two, so gratitude and contribution, if you like, because they're probably the two most important ones in terms of your psychological fuel. If you actually look at the research and test it out for yourself, because I think that's the most important thing, you test it for you to see what works for you. These are found to be the most influential in terms of your overall levels of well-being and self-confidence. If you feel that you're grateful for what you've got going on and you're thinking about other people, then it makes a hugely powerful impact on how you're thinking and feeling. So you've got the physical fuel, you've got the psychological fuel. And so we've got these two things, and what I realised was actually all of these strategies are really, really great. So we've got this mindset stuff, so we can change gear when we need to. But we've also got these things that we can do. So we can think about our nutrition, we can do some meditation, we can do all of this. And yeah, they work, they're great, no doubt about it. But what I sort of found was it's a little bit like when you've got, say, an open wound, and in that open wound you've got some grit. Let's say you came off that bike earlier, and you got some grit into your open wound. And what you've got with all of these different strategies, so this fuel, is a bit like a plaster. You pop it onto that wound, and it kind of works for a while, but at the end of the day, the grit's still there. So you still end up by having issues, and you still end up in positions where you're having that negative mindset, so you're having to change gear. So it wasn't a completely sustainable kind of approach, and it didn't kind of work for me. It was like, there's got to be more to this than what we've got right now, because it all feels a bit kind of all over the place. What I realised was, not in a similar way to the car needs to have gears to be able to move, needs to be able to have the fuel so that it can actually go places. We also need to maintain the car. We need to make sure that, I don't know, some of us aren't this great at dealing with the car. I think I'm better in terms of my mind than I am my car, to be honest. But we need to look after the bodywork and make sure that it is kept okay. We need to make sure that the tyres have got air, etc. So we've got to make sure that it's maintained. And so what crossed my mind was, okay, well, how do we maintain our mind then? And this led me down sort of a bit of a journey thinking about, okay, well, what am I doing physically on a regular basis that could influence how my mind state is? What am I doing psychologically on a regular basis that could influence my mind? In other words, what are my conscious and subconscious, and this is the key thing, what are my conscious and subconscious rituals, routines, and habits? And this is where it got quite fascinating for me. And it certainly proved to be quite enlightening for a lot of people that I now work with. So we've got a number of different routines. So we've, again, got physical routines and we've got psychological routines. And with the physical routines, a number of examples of those. The most powerful routine you have, believe it or not, is the routine you have when you wake up in the morning. It sets you up for the day ahead. And there are a lot of people, particularly now, remote working, isolation, everything that's going on. There are a lot of people right now that are kind of like, they may before have had the alarm set a bit earlier, but now they recognise that they don't really need to get up that early. So the alarm goes off, maybe they hit the snooze a few times, like, oh no, I don't need to get up yet. And they keep hitting snooze. And then they kind of roll out of bed, they find their way to the kettle, they grab a coffee. And then they, arrive at the laptop, open the laptop, and they're still sat in the dressing gown, for example. That kind of routine actually has a vastly different impact on your mind state for the day ahead, compared to if you have a routine where you set that alarm. When you wake up with that alarm, you're happy to get out of bed and you jump out of bed and you actually know exactly what you're going to do. If you look at all the high performers, and high performers have always gone through challenges. Nobody has had it easy to be a high performer. I'm going to say that right now. So if you look at the high performers, almost without exception, they have a very solid morning routine. And most of the time, that morning routine includes certain things. And those certain things, for most people, includes meditation or visualization, or both, exercise, and learning. It has those things. And some people get up at, some people get up at 4, some people get up at 5, some people get up at 6. It's up to you how long you want to devote to your morning routine. The one thing out of all of those things that I strongly urge you to do, if you're going to consider thinking about your routines and how they influence you, is the visualization. And you can do that while you're brushing your teeth. So the visualization is like, how do I want this day to go? What do I want these people to feel when I'm working with them? What do I want, even to the point, what do I want my family to feel today? How can I help them to feel good today? So there's loads of different things that go into just your morning routine and how that affects your mind state. How do I want to feel? I want to feel confident. You visualize yourself feeling confident and able to tackle the challenge. If you're going to a networking meeting, you're feeling a bit shaky about it because you don't really like networking. It's like, no, how do I want to be? I want to be that confident person that goes up to people and says, hi, my name's Lou, and goes and shakes their hands. That's what I want to be. So then you visualize and you imagine what it actually feels like to be doing that. So you've got those physical routines, such as your morning routine. There are others throughout the day as well. You also have like kind of your habits and the ways that you work. One thing, particularly with business owners and new startups in particular, you often find that people slog. They absolutely work themselves to death, and they don't take breaks. They work solidly, and if you actually look at their effectiveness reduces significantly. Slogging does not work. It just doesn't. So actually it's establishing and say, okay, am I allowing myself breaks? Do I change between tasks? Because the other thing is, people say, well, yeah, I have a break every hour, and that's brilliant, I have a break every hour. But if you're doing exactly the same task hour after hour after hour, it's actually only using your brain in a certain way. You need variety. So it's thinking through, okay, well, what's my routine way of working? Similarly, what's my routine way of finishing? Because many people don't actually have finish times when they're starting up businesses, and it becomes, again, all encompassing. The other thing that you can become aware of is the ability that your brain to create associations. And what you can do is actually powerfully decide to create neuro associations. So, for example, I'll give you some of mine, okay? And you can do your own, and some will work for you and some won't. But some of mine, there are certain music tracks that if I put on, they get me into completely vibed up, completely ready to go. So there's certain music that works for me in that way. Other things, I have a thing where if I need to be on form, so performing well with whatever I'm doing, then even though I work at home, I work remotely anyway and have done for many years, I don't wear my slippers. And that might sound really strange to you, but that's because I associate my slippers with downtime. I don't associate them with me being fully engaged, fully ready to go. So I make sure I've got shoes on. Similarly, I don't choose to work. I might change environment, but I don't choose to work on the sofa, because the sofa for me is where I relax and watch Netflix. So I want to make sure that I retain my neuro association with relax time, because I want to be able to switch off out of work mode, but I also want to make sure that I've got the association with what's actually going to trigger work mode and confidence. So you've got physical routines in that sense too. You've also got psychological routines. And this is the key thing. This, I guess, for me, was the thing that I really didn't fully appreciate what my subconscious psychological routines were. And working with a lot of people, even very experienced other coaches, don't necessarily recognize what their own psychological routines are. And this is where your beliefs come up. Your beliefs come up in lots of different ways, and they come out in the thoughts that are underpinning some of the decisions that you make. They underpin your perceptions of things. Things like, I don't know enough. I can't start my business yet. I don't know enough. I've got to learn some more. I don't have enough. So it could be, I don't have enough money yet. I don't have enough qualifications yet. I need to do more to be able to start. I'm not ready yet. I'm not good enough yet. It has to be right. It has to be right to go. It has to be right to actually start. My website has to be perfect before I'll launch it. I'm not going to run my business unless I know it's absolutely right. I don't want to work unless I know it's absolutely perfect. All of these things come out as these underpinning thought processes that are there. You can also have perceptions, not just about yourself and your abilities and everything else. You can also have perceptions and beliefs about business overall. Like, business is cutthroat. I'm not actually sure that I want to be part of the business world. It's all cutthroat, isn't it? Everybody's out to get each other. That's another thought process. These aren't necessarily my beliefs. These are just example ones that I've come across. I could lose. So if I do that, I could lose everything. I could lose my house. I could lose my marriage. I could lose XXXXX, whatever it might be. I don't fit in. I don't fit into that world. Like, when I go to networking meetings, I'm not one of them. Everybody's different to me. Everyone has more of, or more knowledge, or more experience, or whatever it may be. You've also got things like, one moment, there we go. People may think that so this inherent kind of belief that you're not perhaps good enough in some way. People might think that I'm an idiot, might think that I don't know enough, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm hitting above my station. There's so many beliefs that you can have going on. I could fail, and what would happen then? What would I be left with? I have to work 24/7. The perception that starting up a business, because everyone says how hard it is, there's no doubt about that. Everyone goes on about how hard you have to work, you'll never have a life. It's like, well, if I set up a business, I'm going to have to work, I'm just going to, that's all I'm going to be able to do. And these are some of you can actually have these on a very subconscious level, so you're not really aware of what some of these thought processes are, but they influence you in lots of different ways. And if you think about it, when it comes to a car in terms of maintenance, if you don't actually catch when there are problems and deal with them, so you don't actually deal with that bit of rust that's developing, then what you find is the car itself can start to deteriorate. And it's kind of the same in terms of your brain. And I'm not saying your brain's going to disintegrate or anything. What I'm saying is it's just not going to function very effectively. And what happens is it actually gets harder and harder and harder to perform well, because these beliefs can actually build. They can link to each other and build. So what we actually need to do is recognise what they are, because we need to understand that actually it's our beliefs that are underpinning everything that can lead to all sorts of things. And these are now going to be terms that you can relate to these things. Imposter syndrome, feeling that you don't fit in, that you shouldn't be there. You're not really a business person speaking to these people. Oh my God, they're going to see through you. Yeah, it stems from your beliefs about yourself and your abilities. Perfectionism. So many people have a complete desire for perfectionism. They want things to be absolutely right before they go for it. It's exactly the same with business. Fear of failure is one of the key things. Fear of failure for a whole host of different reasons. And failure means different things to different people. For some people, failure is losing everything. So the business failing, going bankrupt and losing their house, that's failure. For other people, failure is being seen as somebody that actually doesn't know what they're doing by their peer group. So, it's all tied up with what are your beliefs about some of these. It can also lead to identity issues. Now, I want to really, really warn you that it's very easy that in terms of business, and some of you will feel this already, and I've felt it with the businesses that you've had in the past perhaps, but it's very, very easy for you to actually almost become completely encompassed by your business. So to the point where you become one-dimensional, that your business becomes part of your identity. This is very definitely what happened with me, and it was very definitely one of the key issues that I had to go through, was actually separating out that, my business, everything went wrong, but that didn't change who I was as a person. And it was actually Laura that pointed that out. I was so harking back to, but I used to be this, I used to be the other. And what can happen with business is it becomes part of us. And we actually need to keep it separate. Doesn't mean don't be passionate about it, but recognise that you are a person in your own right, whether that business flourishes and becomes amazing, or whether actually it's one of the businesses that you have in your life and you have many more after. You're still a person in your own right. And there's also unrealistic expectations. We all do this. We have expectations for how much we should achieve and when we should achieve it by. We put so much pressure on ourselves. It's a bit like sort of thinking to yourself, I must have so many connections, or I must have so many clients by this amount of time. I'm not saying don't set goals. Certainly set goals, but set those goals within a belief system that's around the fact that, you're going to keep going and you're going to achieve and you're going to apply and you're going to try to be as good as you can be. But that does not mean that you are a complete and utter failure if you don't meet those goals. So it's keeping those expectations manageable in relation to your belief systems. And then we've got good old procrastination that comes in here. I'm not ready yet. There are other things that need doing. We put things off. And again, when you actually look at why we do some of these things, it's actually to do with our subconscious thought processes and belief systems. If we can actually get to the bottom of what some of those are and tackle them, everything changes. If we can learn to maintain our mind in that way, so that we're actually saying, okay, I've got some pretty negative belief systems, and some of them are really sneaky. So, for example, one of mine that turned into a negative was, I want to be the best I can be. And you might say, well, surely that's really like, isn't that empowering? It's like, well, no, because I want to be the best I can be then meant that I put incredible pressure on myself at everything I did. And if I wasn't the best, I failed. So that belief needed tweaking for me completely. And there are many others. Another one was, I want to live life absolutely to the full. And this is another sneaky one, because actually that sounds really empowering, really positive. But what it actually means is you potentially try to do everything, and you try to take on everything, and you work so hard because you've got to push yourself all the time because you've got to make the most of everything. So sometimes they're sneaky. Sometimes, like these, they're a bit more evident and they're not necessarily going to be helpful to you. But if you become aware of them, it means that you can actually start to change them. You can start to eliminate the ones that are hampering your mind state and your confidence and your self-belief, and replace them with ones that actually do make a positive impact on you. So in terms of, thinking about what ones they could be, we're all individual, and certain things will really strike relevance to you. But things like, I'm going to do the best I can do with the resources that I've got available to me today. That's what I changed, that I'm going to be the best I can be to. So I'm still saying I'm going to strive and going to try, but I'm going to do it with the resources that I've got available to me today. So little things like that can really, really help. Similarly, I'm going to do all that I can to help other people. Those are really powerful, very powerful beliefs to actually instill in yourself, and makes a big difference in terms of the decisions that you make along the way. And it definitely makes a big difference in terms of your confidence. In terms of actually eliminating some of those nasty beliefs that hold you back, wow, it feels pretty amazing. It really does. If you can then combine the whole thing, so you then say, okay, well, I can change mindset when I want to. I know that I can tackle all sorts of different challenges ahead because I can change my mind state. But I also know what fuel to put into my mind, so that I know what to do at the right time in terms of fuel. But not only that, I can actually maintain my mind really effectively, so that when those like erroneous beliefs, if you like, pop up, I can actually challenge them and say, no, that's not helpful to me now. And, it's not something that happens like that. It doesn't. It's not a case of, right, dealt with all those beliefs, I'm good to go for the rest of my life. They pop up all over the place, but you become much better at spotting them when they do, which means that you don't just have to coast through the easy times. You can actually embrace challenges, and not just the challenges where there's a start and a finish. It means that if you find yourself in a situation, personally or professionally, where everything suddenly is challenging, it's uphill, there's lots of changes, you don't know when it's going to end, etc. You've got the ability and the skills to be able to manage your mindset. So actually you can do that in a really, really effective way. I guess this has just been the start and an introduction, I guess, to some of the things that you can do in relation to your mind state and your levels of well-being and confidence. If you are interested in this, obviously we can have a chat in a mo, but if you are interested in this, there are more, so there's information and articles and things on skybounders.com, so feel free to head over there. You'll also find information about courses and coaching and things on there as well. You're also welcome, obviously, to contact me directly. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can use that little QR code with your phone if you want to, and that just connects straight through. I'd love to connect with people on there, and that's certainly a very quick and easy way to send messages across and things. So if you do want to chat more about this, then feel free to do that. So I guess for now, that's all from me. And I would just like to say thank you very much for listening, and feel free if you've got any questions, and I'm happy to chat to you about those.